Hey guys, MutantCowboy here. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you can click that subscribe button, leave a comment in the comments section, just help me out, help out this channel. But last week I released a video about just basically inspecting or spying on other people's builds while I was doing matchmaking and stuff like that. And a lot of you seem to really enjoy it. A lot of you seem to get some helpful advice out of it. So I'm back again with it this week to hopefully provide you new information, to provide you new build ideas, just ways to improve your current build, or maybe go out and find a different build to improve your overall playstyle. Who knows? However, before I get into the actual critiques, I did, get a bunch of questions about countdown and stuff like that, and, just farming specific exotics and all that kind of stuff in general. Now, of course, the great thing about countdown is that, you're going to get lots of loot in there. So it's targeted loot, so you can pretty much find or filter through whatever you want to get. And the other great benefit of countdown is that when you actually complete these matches, you do get currency that you can then use to purchase your own caches to further find what you want. Now, on a good run of countdown, you're probably going to get about 200 or so of the specific countdown currency, which on its own is not enough for an exotic cache, but you're basically going to be getting an exotic cache, roughly every 5 out of 6 runs of countdown. And countdown itself only takes about 20 minutes to complete, so you could potentially get about 2 to 3 exotics an hour just by doing this. And I mean, maybe it's not the best way, but considering all the other gear that you're going to be getting along with it, especially named items drop really heavy at the very end from the hunters at the extraction. So countdown is a great way to get your named items, is a great way to get some exotics, and of course farm targeted loot for your specific build. So it's a really good thing to do, and I highly recommend you doing it. Now, the first build here is a prime example of a good countdown build. You've got the survivalist specialization, you got the Scorpio shotgun, coyote mask, you got a badger tough backpack with opportunistic, and of course you've got your 3 improvised pieces for extra protection from elites, and then you're following it up with a Bellstone Armory chest piece with perfectly efficient so that your armor kits are even better. What I like about this build is obviously it is kind of designed for team play in mind. You got the Coyote Mask, of course, which is going to buff your team. You got Opportunistic, which is going to apply more damage because you're using a shotgun. The Scorpio itself is going to be giving your team, kind of a buff because obviously you're applying a status effect to enemies. So, I mean, of course, you can stop them and stun them and stuff like that, which is great for hunters. And, of course, the Survivalist specialization itself, which is going to provide you with that 10% protection from elites. It's going to give you that armor kit that you can share with your allies within 20 meters, and it's going to give your team a 10% bonus to enemies with status effects on them. So overall, this is a good buff for your team. I mean, you're just, rather than focusing solely on yourself, you're basically just increasing the amount of damage your entire team is doing, which just makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker for basically everyone, so you can get through the countdown more efficiently. Now, there might be a few minor choices you want to make, but overall, this is going to be highly effective and great for team play. All right, moving into the next build here, it looks like we've got another Scorpio tanky style build. Of course, my critique of this one is this definitely does not appear to be as team friendly as the other one. You've got Adrenaline Rush and Unbreakable, which basically just kind of plays into more of a selfish style. But of course, the intention for this build could just be to rush into the middle of all of the enemies and kind of use your body as a bullet sponge and basically just being a decoy for the enemies. So, in that regards, it could work really well if this player is not being overly aggressive and is just kind of like sitting in the back a little bit. Yeah, it probably wouldn't be great. So this would definitely be designed for rushing up into the enemy and distracting them with your not so squishy body. And if you're unexperienced in countdown, definitely say that Adrenaline Rush and Unbreakable are going to be a great way of keeping you alive. However, you are going to be losing out on a lot of damage, which honestly means that it's going to take you a really long time to take out enemies just by yourself. A little bit more damage would probably be better, but again, that's more of a style preference, so it's entirely up to you, and this could work extremely well based on how you actually play it. All right, looking here, this is a Shade 67 build. I don't expect too much. The pieces obviously look like a jumble. It needs some work. And I would say the main thing that I'm noticing is you've got backfire, but no healing, no armor regen, no, real hazard protection. This is going to get you dropped pretty quickly if you actually try using that in Countdown. Alright, and the next build looks like a Vile Eclipse Protocol build. Obviously, this is based on status effects. Now, I don't really like using skill builds too much in Countdown because it's just obviously way fast-paced. This one seems to be based around the Jammer Pulse, but, I mean, Vile really isn't doing much damage. I mean, in Countdown, it's pretty terrible damage, to be honest with you. The enemies have so much health. So this seems to be more of like an anti-hunter build for the end of the game. And then the shield, I don't really know. You know, this is a squishy build. You're not going to be using that firewall specialization up close. I don't know. It just seems a little bit off. All right, now we got a Striker Ninja build. You guys know how I feel about the Ninja in PvE. You know, I don't know. What I'm going to say here is that strained on a fast-firing FAMAS makes absolutely no sense. That's going to be my biggest critique of this build. You know, you're never going to build up that stack. It's just not going to happen. You're firing too fast. You're out of bullets in like 2 seconds, and you've only built up like 20% crit damage. It doesn't seem like it's worth it to me. But I will give you props for using the Demolition of Specialization. Not many people use that, and that does provide that 5% out of cover bonus to your team. So that's at least one good feature about the build. And I would also like to note that I think Obliterate on the chest piece here is not as good as probably a Striker chest piece. So putting the Striker chest piece on a really fast-firing AR build would probably be better. Maybe not as responsive. Maybe, you know, it's more of a long-term kind of buff. Maybe obviously the first couple enemies are going to be better with Obliterate. But I would definitely say that, you know, once you get those stacks up, the chest piece for Striker is going to be a lot better. And of course, you can still use a Brazos somewhere else if that's really what you wanted at the end of the day. So I'd also probably add changing Brazos chest piece to a Striker chest piece and then putting Brazos somewhere else would probably be the better option. But again, you know, that's entirely up to you. All right, next build. Okay, I'm going to say this is probably the first overall failure, especially if you're Shade 2000. I focus in on that chest piece immediately. That's a terrible choice. Now, I don't really think that the Negotiators chest piece is great, but you're literally wasting a chest piece. Like, there's no reason to do this. It's a bad choice. You know, putting Negotiators there would be, I mean, it's not great, but it would be better. You're getting no bonus from your chest, and that's going to hurt your build. Again, I hate the Ninja Bike, you know, for this reason. It makes people just put in some really dumb combos. Now, I understand why they're doing this, okay? They're trying to get that 15% crit chance because they don't have enough crit chance on their build without it. However, if you look at their rolls, they don't have crit chance there. Right? They've got crit damage and crit damage. What this means is you could easily put in a Providence chest piece. So you're going to get headshot damage and crit chance. Then, of course, you could use one of your 2 rolls to put in crit chance, which is going to give you 16% crit chance total versus 15%. And then, of course, you've still got your mod slot, you've got your crit damage roll, and you've got your chest piece talent. That makes a heck of a lot more sense. For somebody that's 2000 Shade, you should know much better than what you're doing. All right, another slightly over 2000 Shade build. It looks like we're going with, I'm judging this, a Healer Ninja Bike build. Not something you see in Countdown too often just because of the fast-paced nature of it, but this is a very tanky build, so it could be up front healing the allies, which could be a great thing. The healing is actually pretty strong, but I am a little bit confused by the scanner. I don't get why they're doing the pulse. I mean, I guess, you know, situational awareness makes your team move a little bit faster, so I guess it could be a good, you know, kind of a team selection there. You don't really have too much skill tier, so you are going with a technician. That will give you 3 skill tiers. Obviously, you got Brazos, you've got the Ninja Bike, and you've got the technician. Strong healing, strong armor. Obviously, you don't have too much in the way of protection from elites, and you are going more for like hazard protection. So I guess this is good from preventing the hunters from stopping you from healing. But overall, I'm not going to fault him for trying. I would just say the problem with this build is just the nature of Countdown itself. It's far too fast-paced for this to really work well. And I would say that the chess piece in this situation isn't going to provide a huge buff to your team. I mean, it's still going to be a 9% bonus. It's roughly around there. I think that's 9%. 3 plus, yeah, 3 plus 6, because you got the 3 skill tiers. So that should be 2% each for that talent. So let's say 9% team buff, or I guess buff to people that you heal. But that's going to be the problem. You're going to have to get everyone together to use this, and hopefully they can, be in the circle when you use it, which is going to basically mandate that you're up with the group, even though you don't really have protection from elites. We could talk about the problems of this build and Countdown for a long time. I think it's a good attempt. I think that it could be beneficial for a team, and of course, it's always great to have a healer. I'm just not sure if this is the healer that should be used. So, good attempt, just kind of not sure if it's great for Countdown. Alright, and here it looks like we've got a true patriot Brazos build. I think I actually made a video just very similar to this style build not too long ago. Except you're using Pestilence, and you are not really going for the same kind of thing I was going. I was going for the brr build, but this is more of a tick build. You don't really have too much weapon damage. Your Pestilence isn't going to be really getting much of a buff, but you're probably just using it more to spread the red, white, and blue. So honestly, it does look like a pretty good build. If you manage to stop a group coming out of a doorway with that riot foam, and you can spray them all down with red, white, and blue, causing those explosions, that's going to be pretty fantastic. I don't know if the turret's the best choice. I mean, it's not a bad choice, but again, Countdown does not really favor the turret very much. Drone may be a little bit better, but turret, obviously, being static and the enemy's constantly spawning at random locations, doesn't always make it the best. Overall, I think this build has potential. I kind of like the way that he's going. Overall, though, I do kind of wonder how effective in Countdown this is going to be, because, again, the enemies spawn far away from each other quite regularly, so those Pestilence stacks really aren't going to spread very much. And if you're dealing with a very good team who are clearing the enemies really quickly, you're not really going to be spreading too much Pestilence, and your skills are going to be kind of a little bit obsolete. So I would say that it's a good attempt and probably a good build, just maybe not for Countdown. Alright, and another one. Looks like we got a Striker Coyote Cheska build. Okay. Overall, it's just a solid build. I would say that Focus, though, might be a little bit odd for this build. I like Focus, don't get me wrong. I like Focus on AR builds, yes. This specific build with Striker, honestly, I'm a little bit on the fence with this combination. The build looks solid, just the combination of the Firewall with Focus, because obviously you want that Firewall shield so that you can be up close and get a damage buff. Overall, not a bad build, and it's definitely more usable than a lot of builds I've seen. But for somebody with 11,000 shade, I would say that it's definitely an odd combination. This is something I would expect to see more from a under 1,000 shade level build. But overall, I think it could work and it could be effective. All right, we got a Heartbreaker build here with Catharsis. Yeah, this is, obviously, Heartbreaker build, it pretty much works with anything you do. I don't know if he's got enough bleed resistance on the build for me personally. He's obviously using that backfire. He's probably relying on Heartbreaker bonus armor and the Catharsis to save him from that, which can work, but it's still, personally, I hate getting the bleed on me, even if I do have bonus armor, because it can be a dangerous situation if the enemy jumps you at the wrong time. We got another Heartbreaker build here. This one is more focused on just crit chance, crit damage. I would say that the Coyote Mask is probably going to be better than Grupo Sombra, just because, if you're playing up close with that shield, trying to get those Heartbreaker stacks, yeah, I think the Coyote Mask is going to give you the 25% versus the 15%, which is better. But still, overall, this is a good standard Heartbreaker build that's going to work well for him. Obviously, his shield's going to be strong. He's got it paired with the Flatline, because he's pulsing the targets anyway. It's going to work. It's going to be good. And this is actually, a smart move to use this kind of build, especially for somebody who's 460 shade. So they probably took a little bit of inspiration from YouTube or something. But yeah, it's a good, solid build. All right, now this is an interesting one. This is obviously it's pulse resistance, hazard protected, ninja bike build, and my critique of this one is this is not a PvE build. This is definitely a PvP build. It can be a pretty good PvP build. It's definitely not something that you'd run around with in PvE, and this is where I'm inspecting this person at. What I would say is, it just doesn't make any sense to have pulse resistance on a PvE build because obviously the enemies don't really have pulse or get any bonus from pulse. It's not going to stop the hunters. But honestly, my honest opinion of this build is, yes, this would probably be a great build for PvP. I would say that changing out the Cheska for armor and then changing out the Eclipse Protocol for weapon damage, it doesn't make much sense, and that's probably why you have explosive resistance on there, because that was the only piece that had hazard protection and you just kind of went with it. Again, it would just be easier if you went Eclipse Protocol that had hazard protection on it and rolled it to armor, and then just went with a base Cheska with hazard protection, and then you could just kind of roll off explosive resistance for whatever, because you don't need to touch the armor. You can just leave it as weapon damage. But you are going to be pushing out some pretty good damage with that backfire, and you are hazard protected, so that's great. But overall, I would still say this is a very PvP build, and for PvE, you could probably make some substantial improvements. All right, we've got a full-on glass cannon looking build here. Again, this is a good standard build for PvE. You could even use this in PvP. I mean, yeah, you can drop some players before they ever get to you with this. Of course, you're not going to live long if they ever do get to you, but it can work. I would say, since I found him in Countdown, I would say this is probably not a build I would want to use in Countdown. This is way too squishy, and things are going to drop you all the time. So, yeah, I would probably switch that kind of aspect up. I'd probably get rid of Glass Cannon at the very least. Switch to something that maybe isn't going to make you as squishy. But, this is just a very standard, very basic DPS build without Contractor's gloves. So, yeah, I'd probably say Contractors are probably better in the slot. But, again, standard DPS build. Alright, and then we have another Strikers. Obviously, the main thing that I'm noticing with this one is that he is using the smart choice of the chest and the backpack with Strikers, so he is getting that basically max stack bonus whenever he can build it up. He is obviously squishy, so that's, probably a little bit of an issue, but he does have the shield just in case. He is using Grupo Sombra and Cheska for his two other slots. Obviously, those are probably, the standard is just to go with Contractors and Fox's Prayer. That's probably going to give you the best damage on this build. But I'm not going to fault him for that, because obviously some people just like to have that 60% crit chance and that high crit damage. So overall, it's going to be a good working build. Alright, and the final build that I'm going to be looking at here, we've got, it looks like a pretty good build. Now, this is, again, focused on Countdown. This looks like a good build overall, though, for any sort of PvE activity. You've got the Scorpio Shotgun, again, applies status effects, which is great for stunning hunters and stuff like that. 3 armor cores, which is going to help the shield out a substantial amount, and pretty much everything else invested into damage. And I guess the source of his healing is going to be from that Ridgeway's Pride chest piece, so applying the bleed, and then, of course, getting that armor regen from it. So this is going to provide you a good amount of survivability. Having, let's say, a Walker Harris backpack, that, that 5% armor is going to give you more damage than that 10% shotgun damage. So that would be an improvement. And then, of course, if you went with the Contractor's gloves and the Fox's Prayer knee pads, you're going to get more damage overall, which, again, is the point of the build. It's to do damage and just to be a little bit tanky while you're doing it. So that would be what I would do. Switch the backpack to Walker Harris, and then the gloves and the knee pads go to Contractors and Foxes, and that'll give you basically a better return on your damage. And of course, you can roll Fox's Prayer to have armor on them. So overall, if you made those changes, you would just get more damage on your build with basically no other changes. So that's kind of just exactly how you would want, if this is the build that you want, changing it out, getting a little bit more damage and keeping everything else the same is pretty much just, a smart choice. Now, generally speaking, when you're looking at Countdown builds, you do tend to see better builds. And this is because, more often than not, you get higher shade level players in Countdown than you do just random matchmaking for missions. And I think this just has to do with the nature of the game itself. Obviously, it's, a little bit more, I would say it's intimidating for some players to go into Countdown because it's not just, something that they've done before. So I think newer players probably haven't really gotten into Countdown as much as, I would say the more veteran players. Obviously, a lot of the veteran players know Countdown. They know how to run it quickly. They know what builds to use, for, I guess, most efficiency. And with the way that you go into Countdown, with the way that it's match made, I think it's a little bit more intimidating for newer players. Whereas if you're going into a mission, you could just request backup and people are going to join you, and it's, whatever, right? So in that regards, I understand why there's better builds in Countdown. Still, there are, some players who are really low level who don't have good builds who are joining in. And of course, hopefully they are getting a lot better pieces and they are able to build, better builds quickly. And I'm not trying to sound elitist by saying, like if you're low shade level, it's probably not going to be great for you. What I really mean is that if you have underperforming gear in Countdown, it's going to be much more noticeable than it is in just a regular mission. And this is because obviously Countdown is a 8-player event. So the enemies are going to hit harder, they're going to have more health, and if you're not hitting hard and you're, just not able to, I guess, tank that damage, or you're not really good enough to avoid taking that damage, you don't know when you should get out of the way and when you should, fight, then you're going to have a lot less fun playing through Countdown with a bad build, just because you're going to constantly be dropping, constantly need to get revived, and you're going to be looking at these people who are just standing in front of heavies and standing in front of these elites, tanking bullets all day long, and you're going to be like, what the F? So overall, if you're new to Countdown, what I would say is, you probably want to focus on two things, and that's getting some protection from elites mods, crafting some improvised pieces, namely the gloves, the knee pads, and the holster. Craft those as improvised, and then basically just cram as much protection from elites onto the build as you can. Now, you may not be doing godly damage with a build like that. You may not get the most damage in the game. However, you are going to be helping out the team in the fact that you're not going to be going down all the time. Which, of course, the more you go down means the more somebody else has to spend time to revive you, and the less damage that you can actually do, even if you're not doing max damage, the less damage that you do, the more often you're down. So I would say to help out the team, investing in a good protection from elites build is a great starting point for any beginning player. Now, of course, it's also a catch-22 because the best place to farm mods would possibly be Countdown. So if you're really just starting out, what I would say is go into Countdown with a tankier build, maybe using Adrenaline Rush and Unbreakable. That way you don't always run the risk of just getting dropped all the time. And, kind of filling in the gaps with as much weapon damage, crit chance, crit damage, armor regen, that kind of stuff as you can. I would say stay away from like Memento builds, stay away from Ninja builds, because you really need to get kills to build stacks of the Memento. And Ninja, well, unfortunately, it's not really providing as much as people want to believe it's providing. Yes, you get an armor core, and yes, you get a skill tier and a weapon damage roll, but overall, it's unimpressive. And if you don't have the best gear to begin with, and you're just kind of using random stuff to put in there, you're not really going to get the benefits of a Ninja build at all anyway. So overall, I would probably just say go with good armor pieces that have stuff like armor regen. And if you can't do that, just go with total armor. And there's nothing wrong with going with a tanky armor build with a shield that's going to at least keep you alive, right? So that will at least allow you to still deal damage to the enemy. It will still, keep you from going down, and it will basically allow your teammates to focus more on dealing damage than reviving you, which is really what you want to accomplish as you're doing your first couple of runs of Countdown before you can actually get really good pieces of gear and get the build I guess you more or less want. But then after you do a few runs of Countdown, you can probably put together that build that you need and have a lot better time and a lot better results. And of course, once your build looks better, you do run the risk of being kicked less from countdown matchmaking. Of course, I've seen it happen, and yeah, people with bad builds or lower shade levels are getting kicked from countdown by certain people, but it's not super prevalent. Most people just kind of go into countdown and are pretty chill about it. They just want people in there rather than getting the best people in there. So with that in mind, yeah, hopefully you guys took something from this video. Hopefully you got some inspiration for your own builds. And unfortunately, if you are somebody who does have a lower quality build than others, you see a path forward to improve your current build and to have I guess, just more fun overall playing Countdown or whatever activity of your choice. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one.